Welcome to our episode today. We have an amazing guest. We have Blaz, and we are talking about men's mental health. His story is not a unique story, but it's his story, and he's very open on sharing. And plus, he gives some really great tips on how to help oneself through burnout and dealing with trauma and what the cost of childhood trauma does to you as an adult, and especially as a male adult, because as we all know, if you're a man, you don't cry, you don't show emotions. And this is something that Lenka and I are really passionate about, to show that just because you're a man, it doesn't mean you don't feel and have emotions. And Blaz has really brought that across. He's really spoken about it, and he is very open in the way that he is talking about the burnout that he's gone through and how he's having to deal with his culture and his way he was brought up and this perceived ideas of you cannot show emotions. So do come and listen. It is a really great, it's uplifting, it's not negative, it's not sad, it's positive. And Blaz has a really unique way of describing things. So as Lenka says, grab a cuppa and come and listen to this beautiful episode.
But you know the drill. Before we jump into the conversation, a friendly reminder, please hit subscribe wherever you are listening. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else, please follow and subscribe to our podcast. It really helps us with getting the reach and being introduced to new listeners who can really benefit from these conversations. So thank you so much for being here and listening. Hit subscribe, and now let's get into this conversation with Blaz. Hi, Blaz. How's it going?
Hey, it's going pretty well. How about you?
All good. Welcome to the show. So, today's conversation will be probably slightly different from our usual interviews, where we will be talking about your personal experience more than you coming here as a professional teaching something from the perspective
Mhm,
of I've trained extensively and I practice extensively in an
mhm,
area, in a modality, rather than, okay, this is my journey, this is what I've been through, this is what I've learned along the way, and this is what I'm still working on.
mhm.
So, tell us a little bit about you. Where are we starting, embarking on this
Uh,
journey with you? Where do you want to
Yes.
start?
Okay, so I am Blaž. I currently live in Slovenia and have lived in Slovenia since I was born. And the best way probably to start is just to tell everybody about a little bit about my personal journey, also professional one here, so that we're going to get into then my personal life. So I graduated from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point in 2012, and I went into the Slovenian military the same year, pretty much 2012. Then I was in the military for 5 years. In between, I got an MBA from here, the local University of Ljubljana. And then I quit the military in 2017 and became a plant production director for a local company here, around 140 people. Then, after a year, I switched jobs completely and I became an IT consultant. Like I had no idea what was going on, and my still claim to fame in that interview was when they asked me what do I know about IT. I was like Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. That was it. Um, and I was there for 2 years. Then I switched jobs again, and I became a head of operations for a food delivery company. So based on where you are, DoorDash, Uber Eats, Deliveroo, and stuff like that. And it was the company just started here, and within 6 months I actually became a regional operations director for 8 countries here in the Balkan area. um, then I got completely burnt out, and that was in beginning of 2023, and I went on to sick leave for 6 months. And after that, I became a chief of staff for a CEO for a career coaching company. So I completely changed again the my direction. And after a year that I was there, so I was in on the track to become a COO of the company as well. But then I switched direction and I became a coach, so leadership and career coach. Now, now we come to 2025 where I was legitimately got sick of everything. So my trauma came back to bite me hard since I was traumatized as a child quite a lot. And 2025 was kind of like the way I see it as recovering myself and building my kind of like foundations for myself. So if you would have asked me to come on this show last year, I would be like not even responding to you. And I didn't respond to anybody. The only person that I was talking to pretty much regularly was, of course, my girlfriend who we live with and my therapist on a weekly basis. And that was pretty much it. And then in 2026, so now, kind of like this year for me, is building the foundations of myself and my business. And with the business, I am a fractional operations person for small businesses and solopreneurs, where I help them build operations, automatize operations, and then build teams as well. So that's kind of like my short story.
And I think it's interesting to possibly dive into the challenges of someone, along the way of life, realizing the trauma, the challenges that you've been through. Whilst I can imagine that military was not helpful too much, there probably a bit more trauma layering on top of that. It doesn't seem, from my experience and knowledge, as the most friendly, cuddly, emotionally intelligent, kind of a supportive environment. And then obviously now being in the middle of building new foundations and building a new business. And we all here are entrepreneurs, so we know that building a business is a bloody hard job, which comes with its own challenges, and then navigating personal recovery and foundations versus at the same time building a business foundation. So if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit more about then your experience of what was it that you realized that, we don't have to go into the depths of the childhood trauma. You can tell us as much or as little as you want, but I'm curious to see what you've noticed that you kind of got out of that, like what it left you with that you then uncovered and had to work on.
Yeah. So one of the things that I always love to say is if anybody wants to know what kind of like child trauma I had, just pick up any book about childhood trauma that has a list of traumas that exist, and legitimately I have every single one of them. The only thing that I'm not sure exactly is, I would say, physical trauma, physical abuse. My therapist says that I have it, but I can't remember it. So kind of like that. Everything else, emotional, psychological, it was there. And that kind of like, as you may imagine, it informed my whole life, right? So one of the biggest things that happened to me, and when I went into the military, was actually the military kind of, I would say, almost saved me in a sense, because in my personal life, I never had stability, and I never had anything that would be in terms of, I knew where I needed to go. And the military gave me an organization that I knew where I have to go. I knew exactly what every day would be like. And I didn't need to kind of worry about, oh, is today when I'm going home, is it going to be my parents yelling, my dad drinking, and all of that kind of like that. So in this sense, the military saved me. But as a result, I had to, of course, cover and put my feelings aside even more than I had before. Because one of the things that what my dad was also doing, he was living his life through me. And both of my parents were kind of emotionally engaged with me instead of each other, right? So pretty much I was drained. I was emotionally drained, and the military just exaggerated that one, which, then caused all of the cascading effects that I'm pretty sure we're going to be talking about a little bit later on.
You said that you joined the military in 2012, but you said West Point in the US.
Yes.
So how?
It's just West Point is a military academy, and it's 4 years. So I came into the US in 2008, and I was there for 4 years of the military academy, and then officially I joined the Slovenian military in 2012.
Okay, so just to clarify, because the I know that West Point is a USA, like you said, academy.
Yes.
But I mean, I'm I'm an ex-naval wife, so I get what the military does to you. But as you said, it does bring stability in the ways that you know what times you got to get up, you know when chow time is, you know where you have to be, you know when to be on parade, you know when there's off time. Everything is very regimented. And
Yes.
and one thing that I have experienced through both my marriages, but also through talking with other military personnel, is the military attracts kids who've been traumatized.
Yes.
So kids who've been abused, whether it's psychological, physical, all sorts, it tends to attract
Mhm.
kids who've been abused when they become old enough to join the military, because it's in that way has that stability. But like you said, when you come out of the military, that's when you are confronted by everything. and
Exactly.
and not only having to adapt back to civilian life, but actually having to deal with the trauma from pre-military. And then
Yeah.
if you've been in a conflict zone, you then have that trauma on top of everything else. So
Mhm.
it's quite a minefield that that
It
that
is.
happens. And it's something that I've spoken to my husband a lot about it, and my ex-husband had issues. So I'm really interested to know how you processed from military life to civilian life, because I know a lot of military personnel find that step very difficult and how to deal with it. And it's most probably
Yeah.
something you didn't necessarily deal with because you had the burnout, you had all the stuff
Yeah.
pretty much kick you up the behind
Yeah.
last year and the year before. So I'd love to know just a little bit how your journey was from going from the military, trying to deal back in civilian life,
Mhm.
and then being confronted by everything and then
Yeah.
the experiences that you had.
So probably I would say for me, especially like if we're looking at, I'm going to say the US and here also probably the UK militaries are a little bit different than let's say the Slovenian military. We're still a little bit more not as intense. So a little bit more like, I'm not, I want to say like a civilian military, kind of like that. So, right. So we still have like our regular jobs from Monday to Friday. And then in the majority of cases, like you have Saturday, Sundays off and stuff like that. Um, to say the first thing, like I always wanted to be in the military and I thought I was going to make it a career. But the events that actually happened in the military kind of pushed me out because I saw that I wouldn't be able to get promoted due to, well, I went into the US, and at that point, when I was serving in the military, it was like a little bit more pro-Eastern faction was there. So former Yugoslavia and stuff like that, that they pretty much didn't like me. And one of the things that you know that in the military, people dislike is, let's say I had an open mouth and I told people what I thought. Usually that doesn't go well. And yeah, they don't like that. So kind of like they told me straight away, like I'm not gonna get promoted. What can you do? You still have a contract. You're not worth. Nobody's gonna take you in the civilian life because people don't understand that they think we're only shooting people, pretty much, right? And well, then I got this awesome opportunity. Even before I left the military, I already signed a contract to become a plant production director. So for me, it was a little bit easier to transition just because first I had a job, I had my MBA, and I actually liked being in the talking with civilians and stuff like that. And even like 6 months before, I started kind of like I would say reacclimatizing myself to civilian life intentionally, and that kind of like was just a little bit easier with that, right? And when we're talking about like during my personal trauma, those still didn't show up at that point because one of the things that we as traumatized people do, usually we work from morning till late at night, and then we just drop down so that we don't want to deal with that stuff. I was still in that phase. Like my true, I would say, when I hit rock bottom was actually 2021. And that was kind of like, so 2021, 2022 was when I hit completely rock bottom, and I started going to therapy. At that point, I was still running on adrenaline, cortisol and all of those amazing chemical cocktails that were pushing me to exhaustion and burnout pretty much.
We've recently had a guest talking about burnout, and Hayden, and her surname just flung out of my head. But Hayden's talked about burnout, and obviously burnout manifests for different people in different ways.
Yes.
So just because we've recently spoken about burnout, how did you notice that you obviously didn't wake up one morning and go, I've got burnout. Okay, what do I do?
Yeah.
How did you find that journey, that process, until you realized what it was? Sort of, yes, you were driven on cortisol and that lovely cocktail with that adrenaline and everything else. But what were, looking back now, what were sort of some of the symptoms that you now know was burnout? Just if we've got listeners who are a little bit in that phase that you were, but don't necessarily know that they've got it, because we don't always know beforehand. It's when we look back, it's like, that's what it was. So what were the symptoms for you that you now know was you starting to really suffer with burnout and starting to change your life, really?
Yeah. So I can tell you that I've been burned out 2.5 times already. So, and the first time I had no idea that it was burnout. The second time I was actually on sick leave for 6 months. At that point, I knew that was burnout. And then the 0.5 I always say was when I started my own solopreneurship. And I figured out, hey, these are exactly the symptoms. I'm going into burnout. I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to actually kind of like prevent myself from going into 2-3 months of complete non-working, right? So for me, I'm going to start with the first burnout. So with the first burnout, I actually didn't know it was there. And because it was in 2018 and I was a plant production director, I quit shortly afterwards. It almost didn't have that much symptoms, but I was just working all the time and I was pushing myself hard because I was still under the influence, I would say, of my military training and all of that, like kind of like just toughen it out. And I cut all of my emotions, which was probably one of the things as well. And what was happening with me was more physical in terms of I almost couldn't move my neck. Like all of my background in my neck was like legitimately swollen. It almost seemed like I kind of like hurt my head in a way that I just couldn't move. I was able just to move like this, right? And when I quit, it lasted kind of like a month and a half. Now, the second burnout, that was the worst one. It started really with brain fog. So both of them actually started also with brain fog that I couldn't think. But this one was so severe that the last day I went to work, I honestly didn't remember how I got there. I think I almost crashed with it, like in my car, like once or twice. And then in 9 hours that I was at work, I was able to do around 30 minutes of work than I would normally have done when I wasn't burnt out. And that was like, that's it for me, right? I just can't do it. And the other symptoms were also, of course, I was working more, I was more irritated, and my relationships were kind of going bad, right? So not that much with my girlfriend, but still, I wasn't that accessible. I didn't want to hang out that much. I just wanted kind of like to sleep, right? And then, of course, when I went to sick leave, the first month was pretty much me sleeping most of the time and not even being able to wake up, right? Not wake up, just stand up from bed pretty much, right? And so actually at that point, I started to really want to understand what was happening inside my brain. So one of the certifications I have is also brain coaching certification. And kind of the way I understood that the last burnout almost happened was a really nice acronym that I've learned is the 6 elemental piece of a healthy brain, which I also say is, if it's not healthy, is also you go into burnout. And kind of like those elemental pieces are, L is for love or relationships. If you have positive ones, it's going to be amazing. If you have negative ones, it's actually going to physically affect you as well. And it's better to have no interactions, what I did in 2025, versus actually having negative ones. And this last burnout kind of started with my boss, where my boss changed and that person was abusive, and it was actually a reflection of my dad. And it's no coincidence that 2 months before I started with my therapy as well. So kind of like that was playing out. Then the next one is the M is movement. So we are still, our evolution is still in the Stone Age, and we need to move most of the time, right? We are sitting here and just talking for 6, 7, 8 hours is really bad for us. So we always want to move. And that kind of like also reflected that I was working so much. I didn't want to go even outside, even for a walk. And it was, again, it kind of like was just a cascading effect. And then N, which is kind of like novelty, is if you know anything about neuroplasticity, we need to read new things, like have new interactions and all of that stuff. And with that, if you don't do them, again, it starts a cascading effect. And I stopped doing that. I was learning Spanish at that time, but I didn't even have enough time for 2 hours a week, or at least I thought, to learn those. I was irritable and all of that, and it started like cascading again. And then the next N is kind of like nature. So if we live in apartments and flats and stuff like that, and if we don't go into nature, that's going to be even worse for us, because we're, again, used to living in the wild. We were hunter gatherers and all of that stuff, right? So now if I look in the left, I have a forest here. On my right, on the other side of the office, right, is a stream and everything else. So I can just always be in nature. And then the O, when we're talking about, is omega-3 and a healthy diet. We don't need to talk about healthy diet. There's 1,000 gurus there that are telling you about that. But omega-3 is pretty much the best fatty acid, and it's the building blocks of our brain, since our brain is like 76 to 72% of fats. So I pretty much always just use I have a pill just to pop it in like every day, because we don't eat enough. And then P is pauses, right? So, and we have 3 pauses, which are breaks during the day, 15-minute breaks. Like the worst thing that I did when I was when I had the worst burnout, was on Tuesdays, I had 13 meetings and 9 back-to-backs from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Right. I didn't have even like enough time to even go to the bathroom. So I was burnt out completely, like my brain was fried. And then the other one is pretty much, you have to take vacations. So there's a reason why we always say a 2-week vacation, because your brain needs to decompress. It's not enough if you're in the US to have a 3-day weekend. That's completely not enough. You need to like turn off your phone, turn off everything, and just decompress. And the last one, which is the most important one, is sleep, right? We need 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. And that's pretty much non-negotiable. Otherwise, we're going to have a degenerative effect on our brain. So a long answer, but this is pretty much the way I kind of see when my burnout happened. The last one, I saw that my relationships were going away with my clients and stuff like that. And then the cascading effect was I wasn't sleeping enough, and then me not doing novelty and all of that. And when I found that out, was like I just cut it off, and I was like, nope, I'm not doing it. I am just gonna go and pretty much be more in tune with myself. And I didn't get burnout after that. So this is the easiest acronym that I was able to see, like the 6 element of peace. Go and check them out. If you have more, if you have one, that's not good, that's fine. But as soon as you get 2, it's going to be a cascading effect. And sooner or later, you're just going to find yourself not being able to get out of bed. So, and that's it.
It's a really good acronym. So I've grown up in South Africa, and I've lived in the UK for many years. And I know Lenka's from the Czech Republic, and you said you're from Slovenia.
Yes.
So my question is, and I know that in some countries it's becoming a bit more acceptable for men to learn about themselves, to show their emotions, to deal with it.
Yeah.
What is it like in Slovenia? Is it more open, or is it still, you know what, you a boy, you don't cry, just man up, just suck it up type of
It's that.
thing? Is that?
It's that, yeah. And I think it's also like, yes, we are still more open to it. And even in the US, it's becoming a little bit more open, but there's a big but, it's still not accepted, right? So people like myself, when I talk about this, it still seems like strange. Hey, like you said, you're a man, you're a guy, you shouldn't show emotions, you have to just toughen it up, don't be a wussy and stuff like that, right? Which is incidentally exactly like what my dad was telling me when I was young. One of the most horrible things to say to a person, especially a person who's empathetic, because I'm an empath, I can feel other people's emotions, and it just riles me up a little bit more emotionally. And when they tell us that, it's one of the worst things that can happen. And the way that society currently is, it's like a man has to be a man, like we have to be strong and all of that. Yes, you are strong by showing your emotions, because that means you're in tune with yourself, not with what society or somebody else wants you to think. I can cry easily, right? Why not? If I have this emotion, it needs to get out. We are an emotional species, pretty much. So yeah, it's a shame that we're still not in the place where we should be, as in we can talk about our emotions, we can talk about our feelings, and we can openly discuss them without us feeling, I'm going to say, dirty and like kind of like almost rotten. And um, the other word is kind of like belittled because we're trying to open ourselves, right? So yeah, it's a shame.
So did you find because of that society that it was harder for you to even start to look for a therapist, or that you just had to, well, suck it up basically? But and
Yeah.
then once you did find a therapist, how is it with your community or with family saying, okay, you know what, I have this and I'm
Mm-hmm.
working through it, and this is now
Yeah.
becoming the not necessarily the new you, but the real you?
Mm-hmm.
And how have you found that within your community and sort of
Yeah.
where you are, that you are embracing your more being in touch with your emotions and connecting with who
Yeah.
you are?
Yeah. So I'm still in the process of finding a new community right now, because like I legitimately 2025 was when I cut contact with pretty much everybody. I don't talk to my parents. I only talk with them if it's strictly necessary, like just technicalities. Hey, you've got mail and stuff like that. Since in Slovenia we have a little bit of a different mailing system as well, and stuff like that. Other than that, I don't talk with them at all. So I cut off pretty much all of my friends and colleagues from before, uh, just because I either didn't find them valuable or I saw them as toxic, or at times a couple of my good friends, we actually went to, like, I think it was it was now 2 years ago now that I remember it, but we actually went out, and the thing was, we were just like worlds apart. We didn't like what they wanted to talk about. I just was like, hey, this was me like 5 years ago. Like I'm bored with this, right? And in the end, we're like, yes, we're still gonna keep in touch and all of that stuff, but it's like yeah, we're completely different people, right? When you were talking about going into therapy and stuff, so if you ask my dad right now, he still thinks it's a waste of time and money. He's not going to be paying on a weekly basis just for him to talk or for me to talk to somebody, because you can do this with your friends, and they're going to be um, just listening to, right? Because it's total BS. And also, there's a reason why my dad is depressed all the time, and the only thing he does is go to work and sleep, right? But he still doesn't understand that, hey, maybe if you talk to somebody that's actually there for you and only you, and doesn't have their own issues, their own challenges, right? What we're doing with therapy is, you can get better. But he's never going to do that because he was raised in like, hey, I need to be tough, I need to be that. And of course, he's an alcoholic and everything else because of that as well, right? So for me, when I was finding a therapist, so that's the I think last part of the question was, um, so in this place I was lucky because my girlfriend had a classmate who became a therapist, but and she kind of like recommended the therapist that I'm currently with for 3.5 years, and the luck behind this is that this therapist, if I told you her name, which of course I won't, but if you were checking online, you would not find a trace of her, because she doesn't even she never markets, she never does anything. She only takes clients by referral, and she has a waiting list pretty much. So in that regard, I was really lucky. But when I was trying to find a therapist, I had to do it because I was hitting rock bottom. I really didn't care about that point. I was like, I need to go to therapy. It's time. And just for reference, I knew I was going to have to go to therapy for the past 20, 25 years. I just didn't know when. Or me being myself, me serving everybody else was like, not this year, not this year, not this year. I'm going to do it later. I'm going to do it later. Well, that year came in. So it was 2022, pretty much.
Something that happens when you go on this like a personal development journey. So whether you hit rock bottom and then you literally shoved into personal development, or you know that you're going through it, a lot that happens is your community changes. You find that people who you've most probably known for years and been good friends with, or even family members, and then all of a sudden it's time when it's like, okay, I've got to cut ties. And it doesn't always have to be a horrible thing. You don't have to say, right, that's it, I'm never seeing you again, bye-bye. You can just slowly not communicate, and it can slowly peter out. I appreciate with family, it's not necessarily always that easy. I moved country to try and avoid it. It didn't work. I'm back with it, so sometimes you can't run away. But the thing is that's something that I have noticed is every time that I've made a shift, my community changes, or you find that you start to connect with different people who maybe a couple of years ago you thought, who are they just aliens, what planet are they from? And all of a sudden you're part of them, and you're thinking, oh my word, I'm one of them, I'm an alien as well. But I always look at it as, when you start to lose friends, instead of hanging on to friends because you've known them so long and thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to know anybody, it opens the space for new people to come in, for new connections, because you're not desperately hanging on to the old ones. And I think you're in a really beautiful place, because like you said, you are in the process of building a new community, and it's a lovely process. You might not think it when you're sitting in the middle of it, but trust me, it is a beautiful process, and you get to meet people who you wouldn't normally have connected with because you've gone through that change, or gone through a process, or been kicked, had the rug pulled out from underneath you, hit rock bottom, whatever it is. But when you look back, it's really nice, because you think, wow, this person's now in my life who I would never have connected with, because I've shifted, my brain has shifted, my way I think has shifted, I'm realizing new things, I'm learning more about myself. And as you said, you've had these friends who you went out with and you have nothing in common, but you've known them for a long time. So I think it's really beautiful that you're going through that, and enjoy it. Enjoy the process.
I actually am. And like, just reminded me. So yesterday I had a second conversation with a person that I met through one of the Facebook groups. And he was there doing a mastermind about some personal branding and brain science and stuff, right? And I was like, hey, let's meet up, because we're both into brain science and stuff like that, right? So, and just yesterday I was telling him, I honestly think that we've already known each other for like a few months. We've met last week, right? And I was like I'm just thinking about we've known each other for so long right now, right? And he's definitely going to be one of the people that I'm going to be communicating like on a regular basis. We're actually even talking about actually doing a podcast about men and mental health and stuff like that, right? But what kind of happened as well was, when you're going through this process, like you said, like, right, it is harrowing as well, because of one of the things that my dad taught me, of course, unintentionally, was that you see friends and colleagues only as assets, and you call on them, you talk with them only if you need something, or they call on you if they need something. Everything else, it doesn't work. And one of the challenges I'm overcoming now is that, when I go on just a networking call and stuff, is like, hey, just go and talk with them. There's no agenda behind it, right? And because my subconscious is still telling me something, Blash, what does this person want from you? Why is this question like this? Does this person want to sell you something? Or on the opposite, is like, do you want something from this person? What's the angle? What do you need to ask to kind of like either sell him something and stuff and kind of like that, right? And the best comment and the best kind of like compliment that I got last week was, Blash, when you came to this conversation, you're kind of open, and I see that you just want to have a nice conversation. Which if we're talking about 2024, where when I started my entrepreneurial journey, like legitimately you would probably be seeing me as desperate. I want to sell you, Natalie, something, like please buy stuff for me, and I'm going to be badgering you so much that you're going to be like, yeah, I don't want to talk with him, I just want to leave, and then ghost him, like kind of like that, right? So that's kind of like a big switch that has happened in the past, specifically year, but with conversations like this in the past 2-3 weeks for me. Yeah.
And it's so interesting how it connects again to the business. I'm loving that we're bringing, your journey back to the business, to building something of your own. Because for me, one of the biggest lessons I've always learned in kind of building a business, it's, to be interesting, be interested. It's about other people. So you pay attention to others and you listen. And if you are in the place of, you're dealing with your trauma, you don't understand you've had trauma, you are processing, you're not capable often of the listening, of the empathy, of, being open and being patient and paying attention to others. As you said, it's like, well, I need to build a business and I need to, get more deals in. So I'm going to just push, push, push rather than coming from a place of ease and reassurance and trust. And I'm curious to know kind of where you sit or what you believe about the self-image that we have, the self-perception of ourselves, how it shifts and changes through therapy, through learning and acknowledging our trauma and working through how do we overcome it and heal from it and move from it. Because a big part for me on my journey has been realizing the power of my self-identity and the labels I'm putting on myself and how I'm seeing myself. And then obviously how I'm projecting myself onto others. I would be curious to know what was your journey and what is your standing right now on the role of kind of the self-perception and self-awareness?
Yeah. Oh, that journey is probably the most interesting one, right? And it's been ups and downs, like extreme ups and downs. And like legitimately the question is always, who am I? Right. This is like and like right now, if you ask me that, right, I would say, hey, I'm Blaz. I am like I am always usually say like a trauma survivor and all of that stuff. But like I am comfortable with that. If you've asked me 2 years ago, or even since I can remember, my identity was linked to what position I was in, right? When I was, let's say, plant production director, regional ops director, head of country operations, I was flying high because this is who I was. I was important. And as soon as I either quit or got fired, got burned out, and all of that stuff, my self-image went cratering down because I was nobody, right? And that was the hardest one. Like, and I, of course, we still work on that, and I'm still working on that. That you become comfortable with just the person who you are, and as soon as somebody asks you, "Who am I?" I think of me as a person, not me as a position, which is one of the biggest shifts that I had, right? And it's still hard, right? Because I came like my top professional achievement was I became a COO of a company, right? And that's like, hey, I'm a COO. You look at LinkedIn, all of that stuff. Like if you look at my like because I'm a fractional operations, right? I intentionally don't put myself as a COO because I don't need to. Like if you look at my competition or anybody, like you're always going to say fractional COO because that's the highest one that the highest position that they can put themselves in, the highest one that they can charge in. I don't care about that. Like my main goal here is to help you or client or whatever, but also to help me. And I'm comfortable with being in a lower position or anything like that. But my main thing is that I'm comfortable with myself as a person on what I'm doing. Because this year, like legitimately, when we're talking about head, heart, and gut, right? Like, so they're the first time they're aligned with this, me being a fractional ops person, versus when I was a coach and I'm a certified coach, I still wasn't completely aligned. But right now, I'm completely aligned with what I do, who I am, and like what you said, the conversations that I'm having are completely different. I don't come in from the perspective of what they need to sell, but like, hey, I just want to get to know you. If we're aligned with something, amazing is going to happen. If not, hey, thank you very much. Like, I really enjoyed the conversation. Probably they're going to think of me in some way or another. Or if they don't, I don't care, to be honest. Like, the only thing is, like, I had fun in that conversation. And this is how I'm kind of going with. And the one thing that really struck me hard was that in the first week that I did this, like, I had like 5 calls or 6 calls. 2 of them were like, hey, maybe we could work together. Right. And I never told them, hey, I don't want to work with you. I was like, hey, I don't want this to be a sales call. I legitimately told somebody, I really don't want to, because I want to just talk. And now, like, in about 3 hours, I have the next conversation with this person about like how we can work with each other. And that wasn't because I'm such a genius and stuff like that. No, it's because of my personality and the way we talked.
I love how you realizing your identity is not a role that you play in business. It's identity is very different. So I love that journey that you're going through, and the peeling of the onion layers of who Blaz, Blaz is. It's wonderful, and I look forward to seeing where this goes.
Same here.
So one of the things that we do here is we have something that's what we call the gold nugget. This is where we ask, Blash, can we please have your gold nugget?
Yeah. So I would say, think about who you are, like, as a person, and think about what your values and beliefs are in terms of what do you believe or what everybody else around you believes. Because more often than not, you're going to realize that your values and beliefs are usually, especially if you've been traumatized, are based on your environment and the way your parents want you to be, not versus who you are. And in this case, we have a mismatch of what you truly are, who am I, versus what other people want you to be. And as a result, usually is where people like myself get into way more burnouts. We work more often, and not more often, we work more and more and more, and then burn ourselves with completely down, and we don't have energy for ourselves. So just ask yourself this, who am I? And then go slowly, like what you said, peeling the onions. Like, because there are several layers, and you're going to go back multiple times to the same issue, same situation, but with one more golden nugget of knowledge that you can apply to the next layer that you're dealing with at that time.
Thank you so much. That's really beautiful. Now, for our listeners, if they're listening and they think, you know what, I need to speak to this guy, I need to find more about him, where can people find you?
They can just click on probably the link below, and they can find me with a 30-minute free call. Like, just talk, just tell me like, hey, where did you meet me? Where did you know me? Let's just talk. And other than that, I'm really active on LinkedIn. And if they want to hear probably more about my story as a high functioning professional, as a man, about my struggles with mental health and stuff, I also have a brand new YouTube page that I specifically talk unscripted, nothing, just me talking about my struggles and all of that stuff. So they can choose whatever they want, pretty much.
Yes, and the links will be in the description below. And as you said, people can find you wherever it makes sense for them. So thank you so much.
Reply.
Yeah, thank you so much for this conversation. It was so interesting, really, to walk through, how you have started overcoming and what you've learned along the journey, and what were the aha moments that really helped you, as you now said, get to a place of being aligned. And we know that we're never finished. I think that's a mindset that I really nourish in myself and I admire in others. If there's the balance between I am good as I am right now, I have healed to a point, but I still know that I there is more to grow and learn and heal, and there's a wonderful balance to find. I'm okay now, but I also want to be better tomorrow.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
On here on this podcast, we still have a tendency to want to squeeze in one last question. And given that the mission of the podcast is all about finding happier, healthier, more fulfilling ways to find life, in our words, we like to look for ways to lean more into our lives. I'm curious, what gives you life right now? What is the one thing? Could be professional, could be, completely random. But if you are, looking at this is just my life and I'm living it to the fullest, what is it that really lights the fire in you and gives you so much joy and happiness?
Currently, it's legitimately talking about my mental health journey. Because one of the things I was, even 6 months ago, I would never have done this, right? And me just knowing that if I can help only one person not be alone in this journey like I was for the past 30 years, I've made it pretty much. My mission is complete, right? So that knowing that I'm putting myself out there, I'm actually on camera talking to people, that they are not alone, that I know where they are, that even if there are dark times ahead of them, there's still a light at the end of the tunnel. And that currently gives me a lot of energy, more energy than I actually ever thought was possible. And yes, I do work more on this than I should, even in regards with my business. My business can actually suffer a little bit more due to what I want to do with my mental health and with helping others with mental health. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
thank you so much for sharing this and coming and speaking to us and, coming on camera, as you said, and just sharing your journey, because it couldn't have been easy to get to where you are. And we really appreciate your time and your stories and the knowledge that you have gained and that you are sharing with us. So we really appreciate your time. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on.
And for our listeners, what have you got from today? Are you a man who is struggling to find ways to talk about your mental health? Is this something that you are finding, or is this something that you have conquered and you have found a way and help that helps you with your mental health? We would love to hear. We would love to know your aha moments. And you don't only have to be a man to not know how to talk about your mental health and know where you can get help. So please do reach out if you just want to talk to somebody or you want to share the help that you've had. We would love to hear from you. And until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.